Hello, we're going to be looking at Lab 1, Part 3, the Pendulum, so I can introduce you to some of the features of the Pivot Labs. Okay, so the first part is just some guesses on your part on the, so guesses meaning predictions, so you'll make predictions. But finally we get to gathering data. So this is really your first introduction to gathering data using the pivot recordings. Okay, so what happens is you have a series of tools that you can use that are up in the corner. And I've given you instructions down below on how to do this lab. So first of all, we're going to experiment with three variables: mass, angle, and length for pendulum release. And so first of all, we're going to try different masses. So the mass becomes the independent variable because we're going to be choosing that. So up here in the graph, and you have to, in the videos, and you'll have to keep coming back to the video, what I'm going to do is select the mass as the independent variable. So you can only select one of these as the independent variable. And you can see there are 5 possible masses. When I look over the length, though, this experiment with mass variation is only done with one length, which is called G. So G is represents a certain length. Later we'll find out how long that is. And so that's the one where they experiment with the different masses. The release angle, you actually have 3 possible release angles. So the white bar here indicates that E, J, and O are possible release angles. O represents the largest release angle, which will make it easiest for you to record. You can use other angles, but we'll be playing around with that later. Anyway, so once you've got your selections of G and O, pick a mass and then load that video. So play the video, and you can see what happens is that the finger there releases the electricity from an electromagnet, which was holding the steel ball up. Okay, so we need to measure the period of the pendulum. And the period is the time for one complete cycle. So to and fro, one complete cycle. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to pause this, and we're going to get some tools out. Now, some tools that can be handy. The protractor's handy because it will allow you to check and see what angle the bob is at. It's called a bob. We're going to need a stopwatch. Later, you're going to need also the ruler when we need to measure the length. Stopwatch, I can move around. I can move the protractor around also, but we want it back at on the knob there, okay, for measuring the angle. What we're going to do is go back to the beginning. Now, one of the handy things is, unlike in a real lab, since this is recorded, we can play around with this using the control strip here. And so what you want to do is you are going to want to catch the bob right before or right as it starts to leave. So the finger lifts off and the bob starts to move. So right at this point, the bob is still connected or very close to the electromagnet, which is wires wrapped around an iron bar there. And that produces a magnetic field. So it's holding on to the bob magnetically. Okay, so I'm going to make that my 0 time. So click on this, that'll put it to 0. Notice also what's in here is it has frames per second, 240 frames per second. This also goes back to frame 0 for this time. So that's some information that's there. Okay, so then what we're going to do is just use the control strip and let it go for one cycle. out, back, get it back coming to 15 degrees where it started. So as close to the electromagnet as you can get it. And now you've got your first time. So it says that took 1.4125 seconds. And you're going to put that data in your graph, and you're going to put the mass in. Remember, was 66.8. So you fill in this data table. Yep. Okay, so you got your first data point. Shows up on the graph that's just below here. So here's your first data point. And what you're going to do is fill in with data until you've got a large graph of 3 to 5 of these masses. The mass, you can just have, so you can just do 3 to 5 of them. Okay. All right. Now, once you've done that, you're going to start playing around with other stuff. But let me show you a few features of the graph. So let's just, I'm going to throw in a couple of more data points for fun. And I'm just going to make up some numbers. Okay. All right, so these are really made up numbers. So, okay, so let's see what that did to our graph down here. And you can see that we have 3 dots, almost in a line. All right, but one thing you can do is, this is a scatter graph. You can make a line graph, a bar graph, which would be kind of silly. Line graph starts to show a line. We're just going to put a stack adder, but then you also will have, it's already set up to have a curve fit. And so let's see if that is a line. And so if you put it on linear, then it will tell you how good a line that is. It'll give you the y-intercept and the slope. So A is the slope, B is the intercept. And but maybe your data, you think maybe looks more like a curve. And in that case, you could choose a square root, or, and you see that doesn't work too well. So it just happened that I picked out data that was fairly linear. It's hard for me not to. So that's the way my brain works. And so what you're going to do is you can try different fits for some of these graphs. And some may be lines, some may not have much curve at all. Anyway, so you're going to check that out too, and you can play around with that. Okay, so the graphs are pretty easy to work with, and that's what you'll do. Now, the second one that you're going to do, you're going to check out the different angles. And again, I tell you, you only have one length available. And so remember, angle goes to independent, and so on, and one mass. Okay, so angle you can see you would measure with the protractor. There are actually many angles available. So collect data for 5 angles. So the angles are not listed by number, they're listed by letter. Okay, the third one is where you start adding the length. So length variation. Okay, so 3 angles are available. And so we have only one mass that's available. You're going to fill out a data table with like 6 of these different lengths. If you went to work with some other student and get this data, that would be good. Okay, but you have to scroll all the way up. So you might want to collect the data on a piece of paper instead of scrolling up and down every time. Okay, so let's try this though for the different lengths. So I just have to say, okay, length is going to be my independent variable. And I'm going to, again, go for the larger angle of release so it's easier to see. And then there's only the one mass. So, okay. So for my length, let's start with length H. And of course, you'll want to have a range of them. Okay, so let's see what this looks like. And so just like we were looking at before, there goes our bob. Not much has changed. The only thing is we do need to get the length now. So easiest usually to measure the length when it's straight up and down. So you'll probably want to put it so it's on the 0. Pull in your ruler. So you can slant rulers tool. And you want to measure to the middle of the bob. So in this case, that's going to be 55, maybe 56 there. And so you have to estimate where the middle of the bob is. So 56 should do. You could try to be a little more precise. Maybe it's 55.5. Anyway, so you're going to gather the length data for your different letter lengths. Okay, so that's an introduction to this lab. And if you have any other questions, you can just email me.